Good morning, everyone. I'm going to open this meeting for the Polk County Board of Commissioners for Wednesday, December 24th, 2025. All commissioners are present. Announcements are on the agendas. Extra copies are on the side table. First item up is for comments for items not on the agenda. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thank you for all of your service.
Thank you. All right, last call. All right, approval of the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Passed unanimously. Approval of the minutes of December 17th.
Also move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Passed unanimously. And approval of the consent calendar.
I move approval.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Passed unanimously. Do we have a need for an executive session?
No, sir. However, I believe you would like me to give you a quick update on the CFAA.
Oh, yes, that's right. I forgot. That's a nice little add-on. I'm following my script and it's not there.
I mean, I don't have to talk.
Yes, please. It's important. I think we need to hear that.
Okay. So if you may, commissioners, I'll give you a quick background just for the sake of the public that are here and anyone possibly watching on YouTube. So long predating my 12 years here at the county, we've received a large amount of funding from the state for behavioral health services. The form of that funding is in the CFAA, which is a County Financial Assistance Agreement. So I'll just refer to the CFAA or the CFA. For a number of years, the contract has kind of become bloated and unwieldy, and it used to have a very odd structure in that it provided funding based on certain elements that were in the contract were called program elements. So it was program element 1, program element 2. It went all the way up into I think 50s. And so we got this massive contract with, 40 to 50 different things we were supposed to do with a specific bucket of money for each of those service elements. And kind of think over the years, the number of service elements grew, and you would run into odd situations where you would, as a general sense, behavioral health would have state money to perform services, but you would run out of money for a particular service element and other dollars couldn't be used for, and it was kind of a financial record-keeping nightmare. So for the last 4 years, we have not been able to come to a new agreement because I think everyone is generally unhappy with how the service element format of the contract was set out. And we've been more or less renegotiating small extensions for about the last 4 years. 6 months at a time, year at a time, for about the last 4 years. So for the last year, the state has come with a new approach to kind of veer away from this service element concept, which I think everyone was in favor of. And so the new concept that they came out with about a year and a half ago, and that's what we've been negotiating on in earnest over that time, was instead of having this larger delineated out service elements that each county had to perform, instead it was going to be more, here is a bucket of money and here's a list of the services we want you to provide. You develop a local plan that is set to us for approval, and then you can kind of cater what services you need to provide to your local community under a local plan. And everyone, I think, is in agreement with that being a better way to go than all of these independent little service elements. However, when the state came forward with that proposal, while those are all good concepts, it came with a bunch of other things that the counties really did not like. And in the view of most counties, it was in relation to the litigation in federal court against the state by Disability Rights Oregon and I believe the Multnomah County or Metropolitan Public Defenders. Where they are being sued for lack of access to the state hospital. Essentially, people were being sent to the state hospital for aid and assist or for civil commitments, and there were not beds available for them. So that is kind of the backdrop that is important when you go through how this contract has been negotiated, is there was a concern on the counties that the state was essentially trying to shift their liability in federal court up in Portland for the lack of access to the state hospital to become a local county problem instead. And so the new proposal, as I said, everyone was in favor of this idea of a local plan versus individual service elements. What we didn't like with what the state had proposed about a year ago that we've been working with was previously we had language in the contract that said we had to perform these behavioral health services as funding allowed. And the state wanted to get rid of that. Essentially, they wanted us to be obligated to provide the entire slate of services in the contract, whether they funded it appropriately or not. And they were refusing for the last year to put any kind of backstop in there that we wouldn't be obligated to perform the services even if they didn't fund it. My favorite commentary on that is we got to watch some of the negotiation with the state, and the state essentially told the county's negotiating team, I don't know why you guys are so worried about funding. We're performing cost studies right now. We'll be providing you extra funding outside of this agreement to perform some of these services once those costing studies are done. So I don't know why you're so worried about funding. At which point the county said, so great, you're admitting that what is funded under this contract is insufficient to perform the services under the contract, which is why we can't sign it unless there's language in there that says we're only going to perform the services to the extent it's funded. Another issue with what was proposed by the state was instead of all those individual service elements, instead they had a hierarchy of services that were going to be in a list of priority. Service one was specifically aid and assist and civil commitment services, which is what is the issue in federal court right now. And the way they structured their proposal was we had to spend every dollar we got on service one in the hierarchy, and we couldn't spend a single dollar on service two until service one was completely taken care of. And certain counties, the amount of money they were getting under the CFAA would have been completely consumed by aid and assist and civil commitment services, and they wouldn't have been able to provide any other behavioral health services. I don't know if that's necessarily the case here, but it is problematic when we have services to provide to the community that we need to provide to the community. They're outside of aid and assist, but under the contract, we wouldn't be able to spend any money on those services until aid and assist was completely satisfied. Just for the sake of the record, so the service one in the hierarchy, the top was aid and assist and civil commitment. The next one down was services for individuals that had co-occurring mental illness and substance abuse disorders. Service three was mentally ill individuals at risk of hospitalization. So these are all pretty high acuity. And then service element four was literally everything else for behavioral health. And so the way it was set up is we were going to have to spend basically every dollar on the really high acuity, and there was going to be a large swath of the population that wouldn't have access to services otherwise that we are getting right now. Further, they had language in their proposal that the state reserved the right to declare that the county was in breach of the agreement in their own unilateral and unfettered discretion. No reasonableness standard or anything. They could just dictate in their sole discretion that we're not doing something right, and the counties objected to that. And further, there was language in there that the state had the ability to unilaterally change components of the contract without our consent. I mean, it had stuff in there that said you have to do X, Y, and Z pursuant to this administrative rule. But they're OHA administrative rules that they could change at any time. Obviously, that's a little bit more of a public process, and we'd be able to comment on those changing rules, but it's still problematic to agree to a contract that they can just change the terms of later on. But they even had things in the contract that said you need to do these things pursuant to this website. And they literally had a link to an OHA website that they could just change whenever. And that wasn't really terribly acceptable to the counties because we weren't going to agree to a contract that they could just unilaterally change the terms of. So those were the big issues, and they have largely been resolved as of last week, the last kind of bargaining session between the county lawyers and administrators and the state. So I provided you last week with a copy of kind of the red line version of the contract. For the as funding allows issues, if you look at page 9 of the contract, there is clarification that we're never going to be obligated to use general fund dollars for any services under the contract. There's also explicit language that we're never going to be obligated to provide residential services, meaning we're not going to have to create our own residential treatment center. We'll never be obligated to do that under the contract because that was a concern we had because of the lack of capacity at the state hospital. Under this contract, the state could just say, hey, we need residential beds. You need to just go ahead and provide them. And that's not something that we're really in a position to do. So that was fixed. And additionally, the services that we're obligated to provide, they wouldn't put in specifically the language that it was as funding allows, but they do say that all the services we're going to have to provide are going to be pursuant to our local plan and budget that they've approved. So essentially, they give us an outline of what the budget's going to be. We develop a local plan, provide it to the state. The state says yes or no. And once they approve that local plan, we can abide by the budget and local plan that they have already approved. And we're not going to be obligated to do anything outside of that. Furthermore, to get to one of the other points, that we also got language added in there that the state cannot unilaterally change any component of our local plan. We have to agree to that change as well. They wanted to reserve that right that we could submit a local plan of how we're going to provide this book of business or these services to the community. And the state wanted the ability to say, well, we're going to just modify that as needed. We got that changed. So they can only modify the local plan if we agree to it. The hierarchy of services issues, again, is on page 10 of the contract. The language in the contract is modified that we are going to provide the hierarchy of services, and we're going to prioritize them. However, we're going to fund all of them pursuant to our local approved plan and budget, which will be submitted to them and then they approve. So we're no longer going to be bound to this very rigid hierarchy of services. It's going to be the services that we've outlined in the local plan that they approve. And then they added language in there regarding breach that that has to, any determination by the state that we're in breach has to be reasonable, which gives us a much better leg to stand on if they decide that we somehow are not in compliance with the agreement. Another important thing to note about, a year ago or whatever, when this latest kind of contract came out from the state, they wanted about a 5-year term, which honestly was understandable because we'd been operating for 4 years on onesie-twosie extensions for 6 months and a year at a time. And I think they just wanted to lock something down and be done with it. And I think the counties were in that same boat too, which is like, we would just like to quit talking about this and just go do the work. However, with the major changes, and everyone's kind of not sure how this new structure and format is going to work, it has been reduced down to an 18-month contract. So it will be effective come January when it is approved, and it'll be for essentially a year and a half, and we'll be back at the table to see if this new format and structure is working for everyone. So because everything is brand new and it was such a contentious negotiation, we're not sure how everything's going to work out. No one wanted to be locked in for 5 years for that. So it's a little bit less risk on the contract because worst case scenario, if things don't work out well, and we still have problems with OHA, we'll be able to address those problems in a year and a half. And that is the basic understanding of where we're at for the CFAA. I talked to our contract people at Behavioral Health to see if they'd received a kind of clean copy for county signature yesterday, and they have not. But I believe it's my understanding that we can, essentially the terms of the contract will be backdated to January 1. Because the current extension we're on expires at the end of December here. And I think there's an understanding from the state that most counties are not going to be able to approve this before the end of the calendar year. So we'll hopefully get a clean copy from OHA. That's usually how they like to do things, is they send it out on their end over to our behavioral health contract folks. And when that comes in, I'll let you guys know, but we haven't seen anything as of yesterday afternoon. But my suggestion is, I think the language and the concessions we've got from the state cover us. I don't think we have much exposure to our general fund, which was one of the main problems we were looking at. And I would recommend signing the contract as negotiated.
Assuming the clean copy is reflective of what's been negotiated.
We could definitely check that. I'll be doing a compare contrast.
I think there's enough legal counsel looking at this one.
No, I think honestly, it's a credit to all of the counties in the state being unified in this. There were multiple attempts by the state of Oregon to kind of work with 1 or 2 counties to kind of divide and conquer us. But I think it was the importance of this agreement and the services provided and making sure that this is a good partnership with the state kept every county pretty much aligned on these issues. It's been a lot of fun. Interesting over the last 6 months to a year of watching this is there's not going to be a lot of policy things that every county in the state is going to agree on because it's just different politics and different demographics across the state. And in this one, every county was aligned, which is no, what the state is offering is not acceptable to us. And so I think the solidarity of all the counties sticking together was really helpful in getting some language we can actually approve.
I could say I was in a meeting with the governor and a few folks from AOC, and she was steadfast, committed to what she was probably advised by DOJ, which is to keep these conditions clearly to shift liability to counties.
Yeah.
So the fact that
It is.
that whole shift moved.
It has background. The state has tried to essentially use the counties as a scapegoat to get out of the current fines they're facing. So they are in contempt of court and federal court right now for not having enough space available essentially at the state hospital. And they're getting fined every month for the number of people that sit in a county jail that need to be sent to the state hospital, but there's no room for them. And at one point, the state made an argument in federal court that they shouldn't be getting these fines. It's not their fault. They don't have the space. It's the counties not doing the work. So it's pretty clear where the state's position has been on all of this, which is they're trying to push their inability to have an efficient use of space at the state hospital to make it become a county problem. And I think the unity of the counties in response to that was helpful.
It's amazing when you hear have you read the governor's statement on the settlement? This is really the game plan that she laid out from day one. I think more or less this is the game plan that the counties steadfast and forced her to accept.
Yeah, it was really an attempt to usurp the local mental health authority of the counties to create a strategic plan or to create a community plan based on the needs of our community, informed by people in our community. And to have the state try to dictate what that will be harmful to the people in our community. So we can still do the community-based programs. And we just put up a crisis center. We need to fund that fully for it to be effective. And we will obviously attend to our forensic involved folks as well. Yeah. So well done, county councils.
Yeah. It was a lot of work by individuals from Multnomah, Marion, Lane, and Marion. Those were the attorneys from those 4 counties were kind of the main negotiating team, and they put a lot of effort into it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's too bad that we can't collectively tally up the amount of costs that the counties have spent and AOC has spent, among others. But those are property tax dollars that we've been spending defending our positions. And so I make that statement so that property taxpayers can understand this is the crap that we have to do to protect you and against our own state government, who will lie at the end of it all saying that was our plan all along. So again, thank you, but I'm sure that it is tens of millions of dollars across the state that we've spent to get to where we should have been on day one. So
there's a risk that this will be the tack that the state takes as they're trying to protect their resources to, take it out on counties and their partners. But this is a really good indication that we can push back.
well, the other thing that's sad about all this is that and we win here for 18 months allegedly, and no doubt we'll be back to the bargaining blocks again somehow, but we haven't solved the problem that the state has in managing a state mental facility. And none of that's changed. And their contempt of court still stands. They're still running the clock down on, their failure to perform. And that's the biggest frustration I have is they were trying to dump this on local governments so that they could walk away scot-free and not have to solve it. And how are we going to make it better? If they can't solve it, how are we going to start up a brand new, residential facility in each county and make it better than the state ever did? So it's a huge problem, and we still need help there. And we still have to have that resource. So there's lots of people out here on the streets that probably should be institutionalized to get help. I say probably because I'm trying to be generous. It's Christmas Eve. Thank you so much. You did awesome.
Well, I didn't do much.
You did. No, that's
Your summary was well.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor. Yeah. Good job. All right. Do we have anything else for the board?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Merry Christmas to all, and to all, good night.
Merry Christmas. There's some dedicated citizens here on Christmas Eve.
Absolutely.